What's up, Wesley? Welcome back to the Charleston Wesley podcast, where we make ministry available on the go. I'm Ava, and I'm the Wesley worship intern.
And I'm John, and I'm the director of the Wesley Foundation, and we have a very special guest joining us for this discussion. It is Liv Cockrell.
Woo!
Hey, Liv. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hey guys, so I'm Liv, and I am currently a rising senior at the Citadel. I am the student board member for Citadel Wesley, and I am an exercise science major, and I am just so excited to be here today.
We're excited to have you. And honestly, this is not that, out of pocket of, discussion questions that I've ever thrown out there, but I feel like classes are on our minds, and, especially for you, Liv, you're in senior year, you kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel. Ava, you're in weird senior year thing going on right now.
Yeah, it's like a junior, senior.
Well, yeah,
junior.
there's no way to put it together.
Senior, junior, yeah.
Yeah, a senior junior.
Yeah.
So, but what has been your favorite class that you've taken?
Over the years, or just for this year?
Over the years. Over your college career.
Honestly, I think I'd probably say my anatomy classes. They've been so interesting and fun just to learn how the human body functions and works together as a whole.
Dude, big fan of learning about the human body. Big fan. I think it's so cool. I mean, it really is just so cool.
It's really neat to see how all the the tiny systems make up the big system, and if something itty bitty is going wrong, then it affects your entire body.
Can I offer a really tangential story from my college years?
Yeah, do that.
So, while Ava thinks.
Yeah, it's a hard one.
I was when I was at College of Charleston, I was part of a teaching fellowship, teaching fellows, and I was in the student lounge there, and I was talking about how cool the body was, and I was talking about how the concept of fever is just so clever, is that our body is detecting foreign substances, and so it increases its body heat to try and
kill it and flush
kill
it
it.
out.
Yeah, kill it and flush it out. I think that's just so cool. And I was just dude, the human body's a machine. And this one guy, he was yeah, man, it's a machine, and it just keeps going and going and going and going and going, and it never slows down. And I was well, no, it slows down, dude. And he was nah, dude, it just keeps going. It never stops. And I was my friend, it stops.
It is a hard deadline.
And I was not only does it slow down, but it stops eventually. And he was just no, it just keeps going. And I stared at him, and I was Tim, do you know that you're going to die one day? And he almost started crying. He was 20 years old and had never actually come to the conclusion that death was actually imminent. And I felt so bad because I was just trying to talk about how I thought the human body was cool, and I inadvertently made him come to terms with the ultimate demise of his life.
Good job, John.
I mean, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to bring us down, right? But I just thought that was weird. That he never
realized that he was
He had
going to die.
never wrapped his mind around that. Which, I don't, not that I think about it a lot, but
I think about it maybe
okay, well,
once
you
every
do.
other week.
A lot.
Every once I'll be I'm going to die.
And
this
I'm
could be my
20,
death day
so
in
yeah.
something years.
Yeah.
Because you pass your death day without knowing it every year. And I think about that a lot. Without knowing it. You pass your death day every year without knowing it.
Dude, what if, though, you completely sniped it and then you die on February 29th?
Oh, wow.
And so then you actually just pass it
Every 4 years.
So you do have that cushion.
Yeah,
right?
you do.
Okay.
So, you think in advance. Ava's got a lot of existential dread, in general.
Sorry for putting that on you then, that realization.
One of my favorite early Ava stories, this is the second week of class when you started coming to Wesley. She came in and she talked about how their teacher gave them this survey.
I was going to talk about that.
Okay, well then go.
Let me take it away.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of my favorite classes has been lifespan development, and then the other one was behavioral neuroscience. And it's kind of two very different parts of psychology. like the neuroscience is all the science aspects and brain anatomy, and then lifespan development was all like the psychological effects of like from birth to death, like what makes you who you are. So very existential. Well, this teacher I've had her twice. I had her freshman year, and then I had her again for this lifespan development class. And both times, she made me take a "When are you gonna die?" quiz. Oh. And so basically,
she made the class take. She didn't single out Ava.
You. Yeah. And like the first time though was what John was saying. I was a freshman and like fresh into college, you know, ready to get out there, because I've always been like a nervous Nelly, so like I'm like ready to experience the world. And then like she slaps this quiz down there and it's like, I just think this is good for everybody to think about, you know. And so it makes you go through and like check off boxes, and at the end it calculates how long you're gonna live, like years wise. And like so she starts at the end of it being like, okay, who got to like 110? And like half my class raises their hands, and I'm like, what the heck? And then she keeps going down and down and down and down, and then it gets to like 70, and I'm like, oh gosh, I am doomed. Like,
you like dead last.
I was like one of the earliest deceased members in that class.
That's so funny.
And I get in the car with John that day, and I'm like, yeah, I've just had a lot to think about today.
I look, you want to take that now, just
well, yeah, I'll have to pull it out. But like, obviously that like definitely stuck with me for like a week of like
stuck with me.
Yeah,
I'm gonna die.
It was weird things too. Like one of them was like, oh, if you like the degrees of your house above like 70 or something, you're gonna die like 5 years earlier. And I was like, dang. I'm like very cold natured, so I'm just like doomed, you know, like little things like that. So
you know what I love about that is probably the student who is most concerned about their mortality is the student who is going to die the soonest.
Oh, the irony!
Yeah, it didn't work out
like
well.
For how hyper aware of it you are of it, it's like you would be the one to live to like 125, but actually, yeah.
Oh man.
Okay,
I gotta get right with the Lord now. Like, I'm just like nervous.
I would say my favorite class, my favorite class in seminary so far has, I've had a lot of good ones, but one of them that like comes to mind is I did an exegesis class, which is like a analysis class of 1st and 2nd Timothy. And no one ever thinks about those books, and no one likes those books because like Paul kind of goes in hard and talks about like how women should learn in submission and like all this weird stuff. Ooh. Which that is taken out of context, but that's why 1st and 2nd Timothy have kind of a bad rap, and churches like don't read 1st and 2nd Timothy in from the pulpit, and a lot of people think that it shouldn't be in the Bible, but I love that class. Like it was awesome, like to study it, to learn some of the nuances. A lot of it has to do with like training a leader, which is kind of a big passion point of mine in ministry. And the other thing that I thought was super interesting is that the whole premise of 1st and 2nd Timothy is that it's Paul writing to a mentee, and he's like trying to train like a future church leader, which is exactly like what Wesley does. And so actually like my final paper was like, it was a instruction manual for student leaders in the Wesley Foundation. And I'm hoping to work on that and like actually publish it one day as like teaching college students how to be church leaders using 1st and 2nd Timothy. But that was definitely my favorite class. And then undergrad, I don't know. I'm struggling to think of all the classes I took. One class that was cool was I took the history of the history of modern American music.
Oh,
that's what
interesting.
It was. And super easy class. He would literally stand in front of there and he's like, you should write this down. The Beatles did such and such in 1967. And then when you got to the test, it'd be like, what year did the Beatles do such and such? And it's like 1960. Like he would just literally give
Interesting.
you. So it's super easy, and then you just got to listen to music, and like it was pretty cool. So
can I piggyback off what you said? It just kind of jogged like a memory of mine. Back when I was going to Seacoast, that was my home church for a while. I was in the youth group. Our one of the verses we would always say like after like our lesson and stuff when we got dismissed was it was First Timothy. I forget the actual like numbers of it, but I remember the verse. I'll think about it periodically when we're like at Wesley or not. But it's weird because, like you said, no one likes Timothy, but it's weird that it came from Timothy. It was, don't let anyone think less of you because you are young. Be an example to all believers in what you say, the way you live, your love, your faith, and your purity.
Bars. That's
Dude.
epic.
And I think about that periodically when I'm at Wesley. It's like, don't care about what anyone else says. Like, be an example. Like, do what you think is right.
Yeah.
Dude, it is like, those are such good books. Like, for young people to read,
I liked it.
You got to get past some of the misogyny.
Yes.
Once
you get past that, it's great.
I'm sorry to say that, but like but it's like very contextualized. You got to realize that that's not really the understanding that the church has from it. Paul is writing to a very distinct group, unique situation. But one of the reasons I like 1st and 2nd Timothy too, or 1st and 2nd Timothy also, is it's an old person telling a young person how to do church. And, like, dude, so many people will tell me that I'm doing this wrong. And, like, I just empathize with Timothy so much in that letter of just being like, Paul, could you just tell him that he's doing a good job? like just can you please just tell Timothy he's doing a good job?
I would be interested. Yeah, I would be interested to, like, hear y'all's. Because I don't know. I don't ever really remember any of the plot points there in Timothy, so, like.
I mean, you could read it in like 20 minutes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's super short.
Wow.
Homework for Ava in the midst of midterms.
The other one, John, I was thinking, like, class-wise for you, I was just thinking about this. Didn't you mention a class called Positive Psych to me before?
Oh, yeah. Positive Psych was super cool.
That sounds fun.
It was, like, all up in our feels and stuff, you know,
it was
like, at the start of every class we would meditate, and, like...
What?
Yeah, and
CFC for you, man. There you go.
The professor was sick. She was awesome. But everyone in that class was pretty annoying.
That sounds about right.
I remember one girl was just like, I put my phone in airplane mode when I go to sleep. And we were like, oh, so that way you don't get disturbed by, like, calls. And she's like, no, the cell towers disrupt my sleep.
What?
And the professor was just like, okay.
Moving on.
Positive psych was cool. Of the psych classes, though, conditioning and learning was actually my favorite. That's
an
sick.
Interesting take.
God, I love that class.
Because I feel like people either love that one or, like,
or
hate
they just
it.
aren't good at psych.
I guess.
So.
I aced it,
Yeah, and man, when you get that A on a paper or a test, you just feel like you have so much worth, right?
You're inevitable.
Wow.
Dude, I am like the king.
Not inevitable.
I am so good at finding segues, Liv, and you need to know that about that because, and honestly, I find my worth in that.
Okay.
So today we're talking about where we find our worth. What are some things in your life that make you feel valuable or worthy? And let me make this clear. These aren't necessarily good things or bad things, right? But like you can't help the fact that it makes you feel valuable or worthy, right? Mm-hmm. Like let's just be honest with each other. So, what are those things?
I would say like any kind of like good accomplishment that I do, and someone's like, "Hey, you did really good on that," or "Hey, since you did good on this, can you help me with that?" Just kind of like praise in that aspect, like you did really good. It's like I feel worthy. I feel like valuable. Like since I did this, I can do this. So that kind of type.
Yeah.
I will, like, I know we were just talking about grades, but, like, I think I've said it before on this podcast, like, I have a bad hankering for an A in, like, all moments of my life.
That's a weird way to say that.
Absolutely.
But, yeah, no, I get a lot of validation from my grades. I think one that everyone can, well, not everyone, to the few lucky people out there that, like, have that sense of, like, security, but, like, I feel like looks is a big thing that everyone puts value in. And then I would also say, for me, I don't like to disappoint, I guess, like elders or something. I don't know if elders is the right word, but like people of authority. So I'm a people pleaser, I guess, in a way.
Me too.
So At least I think I am. Now I'm like second guessing that.
I would
but
like go out of my way to like make sure someone else is happy over my happiness. That's
yeah,
where I feel that.
I think I'm a people pleaser, but even if I'm not, like, there's definitely moments in my life where I'm like, I don't want to get that certain look, you know, from like a person of authority.
That
and,
side
like,
eye.
Yeah.
I like. I don't know what I've done with my life, but I just have that ability of just like I've like joked about if you've gone on a retreat with me, I will always say, here are the rules, and if you break the rules, I will be disappointed in you. Like that is
that
like
just hurts more,
dude. Yeah, well, like
that like
and,
disappointed dad look.
And, yeah, and it's like I'm not mad at you. I'm just disappointed.
That's worse.
But the threat of that has like solved almost all retreat issues. I think I even like asked you this summer, Ava. I was just like, what would you do if I was just like went up to you and was like, I'm disappointed in you, and you're like, oh, I would 100% cry.
I would cry.
And like Brendan said the same thing. Brendan was like, oh, I'd be fine in the moment, and then I'd go home and I'd cry.
Yeah, no, I think I could hold it together, like, in person, but then I would not think about, or I would think about that for, like, 20 years.
Yes.
Know?
I would, like a core memory.
I'm not
like,
even sure I would,
way.
I don't think I would cry, but, like, I wouldn't sleep. You know?
No,
Like,
like John's like, hey, remember that time John was disappointing you? It's like,
yeah.
Well, the funny thing is, I've literally never said that to anyone.
Yeah,
like,
no.
I've never said that to anyone, and I don't ever foresee
I think
myself
that's what makes it
ever
worse.
doing
Thinking, like, he's never said this.
I might
but
be
he
the
says it
first.
Am I going to be the
I
first?
messed up.
Oh gosh, I will agree with y'all. So, you know, getting that validation, being a person of words of affirmation, like, ooh, and like being a people pleaser, that's a dangerous combo when you're kind of putting your worth and value in that. But like, I've fallen victim to that. Grades, I've never felt too much pressure on grades. Yeah, I don't know how I escaped that trap. Like, I've just never really been too worried about them. Part of that was because my parents were pretty chill about it, I think. But at the same time, what'd you say?
I said, must be nice.
Well, but at the same time, though, like, I kind of wish I did have a little bit of that pressure, because I feel like I could have done a lot more with, like, my undergrad. And, like, even, like, I've, like, noticed it in grad school.
Did you, like, double major?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
Wow.
I think you did enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll give you that validation.
Good job.
Words of affirmation.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I will say that once you, like, get your degree and you, like, put it in a frame and you put it on your wall, you realize, oh, that's a piece of paper. And, like, dude, that's, like, so rough. I'm sorry to put that to the seniors. Definitely. So, like, speaking from a guy's perspective, I think, like, a lot of men, like, struggle to articulate. I think that we're, like, very hyper aware of, like, a lot of the body image issues that we've kind of subjected women to in society. But dudes are, like, strongly wrestling with that.
Yeah.
And I just think I think society as a whole is wrestling with it. But for some reason, we've, like, gendered it to be, like, focused on, like, either girls or boys, instead of just, like, realizing that, like, we're all pretty messed up when it comes to, like, appreciating ourselves. I see another one, like, finding value is in, like, wealth. Like, I've, like, seen, like, I've seen students literally be like, oh yeah, I worked 7 jobs this summer to just make a whole bunch of money. I'm like, oh, so, like, what are you going to do with that? And they're like, what? I'm like, well, you know, you get money to do something with the money. And they were like, oh, I don't know, maybe I'll put it in my retirement. And I'm like, well, dude, what? Like, like go to Italy. Like, what are you doing with your
Retirement is good.
Retirement
but
is good, but, like, come on now.
Have some fun while you're young.
Yeah, that's a little bit of my approach. Also, like, I do think that there's a better balance in it. But I also think that, like, there's this weird pride that I know that I've fallen victim to, and I think a lot of people fall victim to, in just inherently being busy. Like, I think a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, I'm just so swamped. But really, they're, like, like the attention of people being like, I don't know how you do all that, you know? I don't know how you work the 3 jobs and do the 2 clubs and then have the 18 hours and then the this and the that and then the FTX or whatever. And like, it's kind of interesting because I see that actually playing out at the Citadel and at CFC in very different ways. Because like CFC, I see a lot of people like pouring into off-campus things and just like filling up their schedule as much as they can. But then with the Citadel, it's like trying to find like all of the things to do within the company and then also all the things to do to get rank or to act on rank and to prepare for rank or to meet the PT test. And so I also kind of wonder what's going on with that in this world of like we really value busyness.
Yeah. I feel like we talked a lot about like not that any of those are bad things to put worth in, but like some negative things. Like, can y'all think of like good things that like to put worth in? Because like I'm thinking like, oh, I really enjoy alone time.
Yeah.
So like, I guess on
I
the
don't
opposite
know.
end.
I don't know if like alone time makes me feel worth.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
that's a
I
good
think
point.
think it brings me peace, but I don't know if it gives me worth. But I do think there are things that are good that give us worth, right? You know, there's nothing wrong with like finding worth and feeling like you did a good job, right? And whatever you did, right? If you were a barista, if you were, you know, NCO, if you were the club president, if you were whatever, if you can like put your head down and like feel like you did a good job that day, then I think that like there's nothing wrong with finding worth in that. I think also here's kind of a danger. This is like a double-edged sword here. Finding worth in a spouse is kind of good in knowing like, oh, this is my person and like I got this. But I do see college students falling into the trap of, well, I have no worth unless I have a boyfriend or a girlfriend. And it's like,
I could see that.
Yeah, for sure.
But then also you got to realize that like boyfriend and girlfriend is like simulation of marriage. And like, that's like marriage. This is the beta test of marriage. In like a very watered down way. So like, you know, I think with a lot of these things, there's a good way of doing it, right? But I think that it's a little bit of a mindset things, which I guess that kind of brings us into our second question, and maybe that'll answer your question. But like, what does our society put worth in that conflicts with what Christ kind of wants us to put our worth in?
Well, I can speak on like at least college culture for a minute. I think one thing growing up, like watching movies or TV shows about college, I saw like crazy parties or like, you know, just being wild and like doing all these like things that I'm not exactly sure we would be doing if like Christ was like there with us partying, you know. I don't think he would be like chugging, you know, or anything like that.
Jesus at a rave.
So like, don't get me wrong, I think Jesus would dance his heart out. Well, I don't know. I don't know that about Jesus, but like I don't know.
That's an interesting thing.
That's interesting to think about.
What would Jesus do at a party? I don't know.
Well, but that's the thing is that Jesus like partied, like but like not like in the way that we understand it, like but, like he was like having like feasts and like going to weddings and like you know, making sure that the food was good and that there was like good wine and you know, and also if you just kind of look at the culture, like the wedding at Cana would have been like a festival and he would have been dancing and all this stuff. So like Jesus knows how to have a good time. And the interesting thing about the rave that I was saying is that I think that Jesus would probably go to the rave. He just wouldn't let the rave. He wouldn't try to conform to the rave, right? He would want the rave to conform to him.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of how Jesus works, is he would just go into situations and then he'd turn it more to him than him to them.
Yeah.
That was a really
well, no. On that rave, on the rave topic, like, that's what I was saying is kind of like, there's these things about specifically the years that you're in college that are the norm of, like, going to frat parties or, when I'm kind of blanking, but, like, I don't know.
I think like having serious
Halloween.
relationships is a big,
Serious
big like
relationships.
arbitrary milestone in college.
Yeah, there's a lot of these. College milestones is a good way to put it. That, yeah, I'm just like, when you don't do those things, because I've said this before, I think on the podcast. I don't personally like love to party, but by not loving that, I don't feel like great, you know?
Yeah.
I'm like, why don't I love it? Why aren't I putting my worth in it like other people, you know? And it's like a weird like thing of like, even when you're not putting your worth in something, sometimes you want to, you know? But yeah, I think in college there's a lot of those like little things that aren't exactly probably what we should be putting like first on our priorities list or whatever.
I would say too, like, about the question with society, they want you to put your worth in. I would say that like a big thing of it is like money, like how much you have, like how much physical things that you have. It's like, oh, you're really successful because you have a bunch of nice stuff, and like it shows, because you can't take that when you die and you go to heaven. You can't take that with you. So in reality, you shouldn't be putting all of your time into getting the nicest things or being number one, like earning a bunch of money or like fame and all of that. Like, you should really be focusing on like more biblical things or things that you can.
I mean, that's like something that is put on college students ridiculously so. Is like,
you have to be successful. You have to get the job. Immediately out of college.
What are you gonna do right after college? And it's like, Mom, you didn't know what you were gonna do until you were 45, and then you had to refigure it out when you were 57. Like, you know.
Yeah.
I personally just think that none of us know what we want. So
I feel like it's very rare to find someone. It's like they have it all planned out and it goes according to that plan. Something's always going to get like messed up or flopped around.
Yeah,
you might even use the degree that you're going to school for.
Yeah, you may or may not.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you know, the funny thing that I always point out to students is like, Hannah went to school for education. Or no, I'm sorry. I went to school for education. Hannah went to school for student ministry. I'm in student ministry and she's in education.
That's
like,
really funny.
Like, it just, like...
Meant to be.
Meant to be. Oh. No, but like, you're right. Like, sometimes we just find ourselves in situations where the major doesn't matter. And some great advice that I got from some people when I was in high school and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, because apparently we got to figure that out when we're in high school.
I remember that.
Someone told me, they were like, John, just do what makes you happy and things tend to work out. And like, I have noticed that there's like great wisdom in that. And like, whether there's like some cosmic rhythm or, you know, a divine being who wants what's best for us, doing what makes us happy does seem to work out at the end of the day, in most regards. Now, dumb people could take that in a very bad way and just be like, you know what makes me happy? Becoming a slumlord and like taking advantage of college students. And it's like, no, that's not what we meant.
Well, to me, like, the hard thing about this worth conversation is like, I think it is good to have some sort of drive to make money, you know, to survive, you know, but obviously you can take it too far. So like with the worth conversation, it's kind of like, where do you draw your line on different issues, you know?
Yeah.
Which I think.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Maybe this is like a podcast episode in and of itself, like our relationship with money. But I mean, like, the one thing that I'll lift up is like, Christians are called to give. Like, and like college students, we avoid that like the plague. But like, I said we as if like I am, but like when I was a college student, like it was a tough sell. But the truth is that when I was in college, I was making money. I was working jobs, and like I started giving because that's what God calls us to do. And also, I'm glad that I did start when I was in college, because then when I started making like larger amounts of money, I realized like, oh no, I can part with $100 every month. That's really not hard at all. And then as I've gotten older, I've and like, you know, my lifestyle's changed. I've actually realized like, you know, I do have a heart for, perfect example. We went to Nicaragua 2 years ago on a mission trip. Or a year ago on a mission trip, and the people that we went with have a program that supports local pastors, and so after I went to Nicaragua, I started giving to the pastor that we worked with. And so that way, like, my gift every month goes to, like, kind of an emergency fund for her. So, like, if she needs surgery, if she needs to fix her car or whatever, like, I've been giving to that faithfully every month. And when you set it up on autopay, you genuinely just forget about it after a while. And, like, you just learn how to work around it. But my point is that, like, with our relationship with money, Christians are called to give back what God has given us, right? So, like, that inherently suggests that we shouldn't be too possessive over it, right? And that we should actually be okay parting with some of it. But then also, like, I have a house and pets that rely on me, and I will have a son soon, and I have family members and these things, and so, like, there's also, like, financial responsibility that I have to make sure that I take care of. So there's a balance in doing it, but ultimately, I do think that some people overcorrect and they say, "Oh my goodness, rich people are like the worst people in the world." And it's like, no. There's nothing wrong with being paid well for what you've put in. There is something wrong with how you approach that, though. There can be something wrong with how you approach that. I also think that, kind of going back to the original question of, like, what society puts our value in, is it, like, I think we really value being popular.
Yeah, I was going to say, like,
fame,
but, like, it's hard to think about fame with, like, our level of
I feel like that can also
society.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, fair enough.
But, like, Instagram followers, I feel like,
Yes.
could be, like, tied in there, or, like...
Yeah.
Jumping back to, like, the words of affirmation, it's like if someone tells, like, so-and-so, you're doing a really good job, more people are going to be like, oh, you're doing good, let me follow you and see, like, what I can do to be more like you, kind of thing. I feel like that kind of ties into, like, our level of fame, I guess.
I see that in the Citadel.
Oh, yeah,
tons.
100%.
CFC, I don't see any of that, but, like...
You have, like, your high group, it's like, oh, they're high-mighty, they got friends everywhere, it's like, what can I do to be like them? Like, they're like, separate, if that makes sense.
Well, also, like, you had a mentor freshman year, right?
Yes.
That's only freshman year, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Only the knobs get mentors.
Right, okay. Well, like, not only do you have, like, the hierarchy of, like, people that you report to, so I guess in, like, some ways that could be seen as, like, mentorship. But, like, you literally had a mentor who was at the top of the food chain, so to speak, who could, like, pour into you, right?
Yes.
And then, like, we kind of have that ingrained in Wesley, too, with student leadership, is that, like, we all have these student leaders that pour into younger students or new students, and, like, you know, we kind of want to be like them. And so, which isn't necessarily bad. Going back to 1st and 2nd Timothy, that's kind of like what happens in the book. You know, Timothy wants to be like Paul. But
it's like a balance.
At the same time, I do think that, like, there's a weird sense of pride if you have, like, 18 best friends. And I also think there's, like, great impracticality with that. It's like,
I was going to say...
Like, I have, like,
you can count on one
really,
hand, usually.
No.
Well...
Yeah, I have less than 10, like, super, super close friends that I can, like, call up at any moment. Like, I really... I've intentionally kept that number low.
Yeah.
I have a lot of people I can call, but just, like, you know, at 2 a.m., I know I can call Joseph, and Joseph's going to pick up, and Joseph's going to be there for me, you know?
Well, you were saying, like, I don't know how much you see it in CFC. For me, I do see it in that friends aspect of, like, but I never know, because I have what I would say I have, like, a couple very, very close friends, and then I have more, like, general friends, and then acquaintances, you know, like, it's like
the hierarchy.
Yeah. But, like, sometimes I'm like, do I want more friends because I'm lonely, or do I want more friends because, like, of that fame aspect? And, like, that's a hard one to think about, too. Like... Yeah, what's the root of the worth, I guess? Is it, like...
Yeah, well, and like, if you look at Scripture, a lot of the, like, big names were not very popular. You know, a lot of the prophets were very unpopular, right?
Yeah.
Because they had to basically tell everyone that they were doing their life wrong. You know, David at one point, he's very unpopular. Jesus is so unpopular at one point that they kill him, right? And so, like, there is this, like, kind of scriptural precedent where popularity maybe isn't, like, what we seek after. But kind of getting deep and personal, we all know that college is tough. And we also are aware that a lot of folks who are listening to this episode, this may be your first midterm season. This may be your knob year. This may be your freshman year at CFC where you're missing your family. Maybe you're a Charleston Southern student who's really struggling to adjust to the pace of finding time for chapel and then also trying to find time for Elevate while also trying to be a part of these clubs. So college is tough. And the question that I have for either of y'all, if y'all feel fine talking about it, is have y'all had like a season where you felt unworthy or worth less? And like, what did that look like? How did that kind of affect your relationship with God? Things like that.
I know it's gonna be like very stereotypical of the Citadel, but not year. I was kind of an outcast of my company. Like I was like bottom of the totem pole, bottom of the food chain, and I was partially responsible for isolating myself, and then because I did that, they also isolated me because I again isolated myself. Double-edged sword. But when I was isolated, I didn't have a whole lot of friends. I was just kind of like, I was very, very hard on myself because of that. And it's like, oh, you don't have any friends because you're bad at this, you're bad at this. Like, you don't belong. And as, like, I turned to the Bible because my thing that I told myself was, like, when everyone else abandoned me, God didn't abandon me. Mm-hmm. He was the one thing I could turn to that wouldn't turn me away. Because everyone would turn me away when I asked for help. Mm-hmm. And one verse stood out to me, and I actually got it engraved on my ring, and it was Luke 6:28, and it's bless those who curse you and pray for those who mistreat you. And I started doing that. Like every time someone would say something like snarky to me or any kind of comment, I'd pray for them, and it honestly helped change my outlook on everything I was going through. Mm-hmm. And I kind of rose back up to the top. I had the option to CT out of my company, and I was like, no, I'm going to stay. Like these are my people. I went through bad things with them, and I overcame it, and I chose to stay. And at the end of it, I was back into my company. I had some friends in there I knew I could turn to. Just being able to talk to them and pray about it every night, it helped a lot. Yeah. So it made my faith a lot stronger in what it is today. Yeah. Going through that.
That's like, it seems like a good reaction. I don't know if I could say like the same. So that's really cool.
It was nice to have that to turn to and to know like this isn't the end. Like it's going to get better.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, John, don't laugh at me, but like we've talked about this before. Getting a little bit candid. I've always like, I've never really been in like a relationship with a person romantically. I've liked people for sure, but I'm just like a chicken, and I just it's never like worked out, And in college, kind of what you were saying, I don't think I ever really realized it until you just said of like that's a milestone in college, and I was like, you're right. Like I do feel like I am genuinely missing out on a huge part of other people's lives, and it's like, yeah, it's hard. Like I feel like not to put your worth in that because it's like, again, like, you just feel so much, like, FOMO in a weird way. But, I remember at one point, this is going to sound pathetic, but
this is a safe space.
Yeah, this is a safe space. I remember at one point freshman year, I, like, really thought this guy was cute, and so I prayed to God, and I never really done that before about a guy, but I think I prayed to God, and I was like, wait a second. You don't know what I prayed. I think I knew to keep it not super, like, beggy, so I was like, yeah, I was more like, if he's right for me, put him in my path, or something like that. And he was not in my path.
Dude, so, I prayed the same prayers. It's all good.
Yeah,
so.
well,
I think we all have at one point.
So, like, I think, and then it didn't happen. I was like, well, thanks, God. Like, oh my gosh.
That's the best part of that prayer. It's just like, if it's in your will, let it be done. And then it's
that's
like,
what it was.
Why is it not in your will?
So, like, I don't think it didn't hurt my relationship with God, but like I'm definitely like, man, why does everyone else get this? Like I'm jealous, like come on, man, give me one of these, like make it work out,
Dude, that's so real though.
Yeah.
I feel like we've all gone through that at some point in our lives.
Yeah.
Also, like the pressure that I felt as like a man to date in college was just like so heightened.
I have, like, not to, like be like a champion of men or anything, but like I have always like I have always felt this like deep sympathy for men because of the whole the whole expectation of y'all having to be the one that ask or do.
Yeah.
Like that's why I think I was praying to God, like make him. I was like,
make him do it.
I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna
eyes.
wait. Yeah. I'm here, arms open. I'm waiting. You know, but like for a guy, he would probably have to pray like, give me the strength to like run. You know, like go there. You know, do the mile. So no, I don't know. I don't think it really damaged my relationship with God, but it was definitely like a kind of like it made my prayers sometimes weird. I guess is what I'll say.
And like I said, like I've prayed those prayers, and like when I prayed those prayers, after I didn't realize it in the moment, but after the fact, like your relationship with God becomes transactional. Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you do this, then I'll do that.
Yep.
Right. And that's a dangerous place for your prayer life to go. But my experience, the reason that relationships are such a gamble is because some of them end, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my experience in college is like I had a relationship where I put too much of my identity in that relationship, and it ended rather abruptly, and it also ended not like very kind. And dude, I felt horrible. Like I was just felt like there was no redeemable quality in myself. I felt like there was absolutely nothing worthwhile in me. And in the only thing that like brought me some peace of mind was like this weird understanding that God was still there. And like I kind of had to logic myself out of that depth and out of that valley of just being like, well, if I think that I'm this unworthy, then like, why is God wasting his time with me? And then I kind of realized that, well, God's a lot smarter than me. And so I don't think that God would waste his time, which therefore suggests that I am not that unworthy, And so I kind of logicked myself out of that season. And kind of weirdly logicked myself into like falling in love with God, and kind of realizing that God was like already like hook, line, and sinker in love with me, but yeah, that season sucks. It sucks. And to be honest, I think that every college student has at least one of those seasons, and if you don't, knock on wood, it may be coming. And two, I think that those seasons are extremely formative, and I think that is good in a very weird way. It's good. But when we're talking about worth and value and where we find it, and looking at Scripture, one of the things that kind of popped in my brain, and I couldn't figure out why it popped in my brain, but it's from John 14:6. And it's when Christ says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And I was like trying to figure out why that seemed to be what my brain immediately went to when we were thinking about worth. With Jesus saying that I am the way, the truth, and the life. And what I realized is Jesus is the most important person in my life. Like, he's the main character of my life. And that's a really hard thing for Christians to wrap their mind around, is that when you like profess Christ, you are not who matters anymore. And that's weird because we're told, evolutionarily, like we're supposed to survival of the fittest, and like we're supposed to be hyper aware of our situations, and we're supposed to like play it safe. But then God's like, no, you know what? You need to go to Nicaragua on a mission trip. And it's like, oh, geez, like what? They have rabid dogs down there, and God's just like, well, that's what I said, so do it. And kind of the same thing with money, right? Is that like Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. And so if for whatever reason the Holy Spirit's like, John, you got excess that we have totally blessed you up with, and you're just like sitting on it and not like blessing others with it, what are you doing? And then it's like, oh, you know what? I am going to set up for auto pay for the pastor in Nicaragua. But also, if Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, if we kind of direct all of our actions to the way, the truth, and the life, then, like, it's a good life to live. Like, there's wonderful things in pursuing truth, right? There's wonderful things in pursuing Christ. And so, you know, when you're in the midst of midterms and, like, you are studying your butt off and then you get all A's on your midterms and you feel really good about that grade, I really encourage you to figure out how you can direct that to God, right? You know, exercise science has great implications on, like, physical therapy and, like, understanding how the body works, and also, like, in that, you know, just kind of rehabilitation. And that equips you, Liv, to, like, minister to people in a distinct way. Just like psychology does the same thing, right? Is that we can turn our majors into good things. And I've kind of had this conversation with a lot of cadets, and they're like, well, I do intel, so, like, what am I going to, how does that turn to God? And, like, the number of, like, cybersecurity attacks on churches and nonprofits is wild, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah, because
I never really thought of it.
Yeah,
like
you
that.
can get so much information from people, and then, like, some people will impersonate pastors and, like, text them and be like, "Hey, Ava, it's John on a new phone. Like, I need, like, a $50 Amazon gift card because we're doing this, like, teacher drive.
Wow.
Can you help me?" And then it's like, and a lot of people fall victim to that. And, like, intel, boom, if you all get on the scene, then that's exactly what you, so, like, we can all serve Christ and serve the church through our studies. And, you know, if you find a lot of value in having a significant other, then you should realize the value in paying attention to your relationship with Christ, right? We are the bride. He is the groom. That's the understanding, and kind of a mystery, is that he is the love of our life and our best friend, and he is also sufficient. And so there's nothing wrong with that. But then also the other thing that I think is kind of implied with where we find our worth is kind of the question of whether or not we are worthy. And that made me jump to the Psalms, to Psalm 139:14, which is, I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. Right? And looking at this logically, what the psalmist is saying is that God made us, and God's works are wonderful. Therefore, if God made us, then we are wonderful. Which means full of wonder, full of inspiration, full of capability. And that's really releasing to someone who, like, has depression and is kind of sitting here being like, dude, I'm, like, the biggest buzzkill in the world right now, and no one wants to be around me. But then to know that, like, for whatever reason, God saw it fit that I should be this way, and that I am fearfully and wonderfully made in that, right? And I think this is, like, very good for body image issues, where it's just like, I don't understand why my body is this way. And it's like, well, actually, like, that's okay. That, you know, if you're self-conscious of your nose, that's fine. God made you that way. And God thinks it's super sick, dude. And so realizing that, like, we are loved and welcomed and wanted and cherished by God before we're even born gives us the worth when we feel like, oh, no one wants to be around me, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not attractive enough, or you know, XYZ things. And so we just need to know that God's put in the work on us, and that God wouldn't have done that if he didn't think that we were worth it. And he clearly does. And so that is why I love God, because God loves me. And I think that is some of the best news that college students can hear, you know, is that it's okay that you're awkward. It's okay that, like, you don't know how to do XYZ things. It's okay that you're feeling insecure about whatever. I do think that there can be an overcorrection of this, right? Where it's like, well, God made me to be rude. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
Dude, the people who say, I'm not rude, I'm just blunt, those people are just rude. So, like,
They have no shame in being
like,
rude.
like, you know, like, you're just rude. Like, yeah, exactly. You're, like,
Yeah.
unabashedly rude. So, like, yeah. So you do have to kind of measure that, right? And be like, well, God made me this way. And it's like, did he, or are you, like, actually refusing to be slightly uncomfortable so that the Spirit can move through you, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, if you're feeling like you can't talk to anyone in this college environment, right? If you're feeling super lonely, one, you can talk to God, and God is there with you. But then two, you have to realize that, like, you know, God's going to be with you when you step out of your dorm room and try to talk to new people. Like you can try and fail with God, and that's how we grow. So, like, realize that you are loved as you are, and you are encouraged to be who God wants you to be, right? Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? More or less?
Yeah, for
okay.
sure.
All right. Wasn't sure if I didn't land that at the end there, but I guess it did.
I feel like it's landed.
It's landed.
Well, I feel worthy. So, what are some ways that we can shift our focus from seeking worth in, like, worldly achievements to finding our worth in Christ?
I don't know if this, like, directly relates to it, but it's something I've started doing within the past, like 6 or 8 months, is that when I do something really good and I get, like, a nice accomplishment, the first thing I do is I always thank God for giving me the strength to do it, and thank you for letting me be able to accomplish this and to move forward with it. That's the first thing I do. Anytime I see I've done something good, I always say, thank you, Jesus.
Thank God that you do that.
Yeah. No, that's a great, like, tip. I think, for me, it's one of those things where, do you know, like, the phrase of, like, the more you say it, the more you'll believe it or something?
Yes.
So, like, yeah, it's around that gist.
You
But
mean, like, fake it till you make it?
I guess in that way.
Yeah.
It's not really that I'm faking what I'm about to say, but, like, I guess what I started saying to myself in college is, like, specifically with a grade, you know, if I'm really nervous for a test, I had to literally start repeating to myself, even if I get an F, God still got me. Even if I get like a D, I still got God. You know, I had to start saying that to myself. So, like, remember, like, even if I flunk out of college, at the end of the day, I'll still have God, you know? Which, I don't know if that really eased me, but, like, the more I said it over time, I feel like the more I'm now, like, comfortable in that idea of, like, no, genuinely. Like, I know you were just saying that before, but now genuinely feel it, you know? That,
yeah.
The whole, like, fear of, like, sometimes, like, I don't want to be alone, but, like, you're never going to be alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, I mean, it's realizing that God's got you, through whatever is so life-giving. I also think that, you know, a good way to shift your focus is to know what Christ wants, right? Mm-hmm. And if you kind of pursue what Christ wants, then that's a good life to live. And what does Christ want? Justice and peace and love and care and grace, and, you know, he wants orphans to feel like they have a family, and he wants hungry people to be fed, and he wants you know, prisoners to be visited to, and the sick to be prayed over. Like, that's what Christ wants, and those are all very good things to live into. And the big kind of transformational moment that I had in my season of worthlessness in college was because also through, like, that season of me just, like, not feeling like I was worth anything, God also was working very heavily in my heart to be like, oh, by the way, I think you're going to be a pastor. And, like, that was so counterintuitive to me, because I was like, well, wait a minute, I'm, like, the scum of the earth. Like what are you doing? But then I was, like, kind of going back and forth, and I was like, oh, man, like, I've always wanted to be a teacher. Maybe I'll be a preacher. Maybe I'll be a writer. Maybe I'll, be a salesman. Maybe I'll be whatever. And I just kept on I just went through a season where I was constantly thinking about like all the options that I had. And then eventually I reached this thing where I was like, oh, I know what I want to be when I grow up. And that's a good person. That's all I want to be, is just like a decent human being. And once I released myself, it was so easy to just serve and just not worry about it. And I could sleep better at night knowing that I had been a good person that day. It comes with a heavy burden if you feel like you haven't been a good person that day. But, I find the worth in that. The danger, though, is that there is this thing that people poorly equate, that if we do more good things, Jesus will love us more. And that's not how that works. It's that we love Jesus so much that we can't help but do good things. That's the way that you should look at it. Thank you. I appreciate that. So what are some examples of Christ-like things that you can put your worth in as a college student? At the Citadel, at CFC, elsewhere?
I mean, forgiveness, for starters, just because college students are we're not dumb I don't think we're dumb, but we do dumb things, I guess. And so knowing that everyone in this season that we're all in is going through transitions and has changing lives probably every day, understanding that people are gonna have bad days. I think forgiveness is good. What I was gonna mention, though, that I was just thinking about is I do think we do have to think about worth versus pride, if that makes sense. If I'm saying oh, I put a lot of worth in forgiving people, I guess that's different than being oh, I'm the best forgiver on the face of the earth, So I think that's also something to think about when we talk about this question is you're never going to be perfect at any of these things too, so don't put too much worth in it, or put worth in it, but don't let it when you mess up don't let it knock you down,
Any other examples of Christ-like things we can put our worth in?
I would say one of the things I like to do is I like to branch out to people. If I see someone that's not maybe interacting as much either as they normally do, or that they ever do, I might approach them differently and just be hey, what's going on? Lending an ear to someone who might need it, who I guess doesn't know that they need it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that the people that need the most help are the people who don't know they do. So,
I mean, even making it more like Wesley church related, just finding a church, or praying, your prayer life. I mean, that's something to put worth in, or your Bible time, your alone time with God. We can actually put, we can literally put our worth in actual biblical things, not just
right.
Well,
that's what I was going to say is you can pour into the church. Christ did, Christ is a big fan of the church. He puts a lot of value in that. And and then that looks like a lot of different ways. Maybe that's volunteering for VBS over the summer. Maybe that's singing in the choir on Sundays. Maybe that's just sitting in the pew. Maybe that is giving to that church service. Maybe it's preaching. Maybe it's teaching Sunday school. I mean, there's a lot of ways to pour into the church. And the cool thing about church is that church should pour right back into you, and that's just kind of this beautiful relationship right there. And so, how can we as a Christian community help our friends find worth in the right places?
I guess I can kind of relate it back to where I said I like to branch out to people. Is that sometimes you can see someone struggling, and you can be hey, would you like to come to church with me? And they come with you, and it's this light bulb turns on. It's wow, this really helped, and they continue going, and they continue branching out and maybe finding a group to join or a Bible study to do, and it just overall helps them open their eyes hey, I can do this, I'm worthy, I can move forward.
I'm welcomed too in that, you know. I think that that's kind of the big thing.
It's a big aspect. It's like, hey,
yeah.
they want me to be here.
Yeah, and I think that's a big anxiety that we have coming into like the new Bible study, the new church is like, oh, I don't know if they want me there. And then all of a sudden it's like, intruding. Holy smokes, 3 people have talked to me. Like, they've asked me what my name is. They asked me how my weekend was. They gave me free food. Like, come on.
You feel wanted.
Yeah, and
I feel like that's something we all want to feel is like, they want me to be there. It's like this. It's a great feeling to be wanted instead of like pushed away.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is I mean, like,
sorry.
No, that's okay. But like, I think we have this just bad thought of like, people are gonna just show up to the church, like unprompted, and it's like, no, we have to invite them, you know. And I've told student leaders that all the time. It's like I can talk to students until I'm blue in the face about why they should come to Wesley. And that doesn't mean a thing, but Liv, the second that you go up to them and you're like, hey, I think you really need to come with me Monday night. I think that, like, you would like it. That means the world to them, you know. 2 minutes with you and 2 hours with me, I think that you would be more successful in getting them to come to church just because that friend, that relational ministry is just so fruitful and beneficial and good.
Yeah.
Bless you.
Are you leaving that in or taking it out?
We'll see. I'll see how it sounds after editing. Yeah.
Dude, that was a mighty one. Oh God.
Reset button.
Did you like take well, never mind. Have you ever heard of that? Like when you sneeze, your body takes like a screenshot.
Yes. John took a screenshot.
Something just happened.
I'm gonna go with like, I think as a Christian community we can work on our approach. So, like as an example, if I am like coming to Wesley and being like, man, I'm putting all my worth in like how good my lips look right now, but they're really chapped and like ugly or something. I don't know. Imagine I came in and said that. Like if someone were to come up and be like, your lips don't matter, like get over it. Like that's I feel like that's
the queen of examples over here. Like,
yeah.
You know, it's gonna be great. Is like 2 weeks from now. That's like that exact scenario is gonna play out.
Yeah.
It's just, and we're gonna be like, holy smokes, Ava's a prophet.
But no, what I mean is like, I think you have to, in a way, as like Christian friends, we have to realize that like no matter what, when someone's putting their worth in something, that is going to be important to them, even if it's not important to us. So like with the silly lips example, like don't dismiss somebody, but also how do you help your friends like in a nice way, basically, of like, that's not important, I'm sorry, you're being stupid. Like how do you say that like in a kind way, you know? Like,
well, and we got to realize too that like we're deprogramming years of whatever kind of skewed value system they have, you know. Like if I just like came up to Ava and I was just like, dude, you need to be worrying about your soul, not your GPA.
Yeah.
Like first day. And you're like, well, I've spent the last 18 years of my life worried about like doing this. Like I shouldn't expect you to just overnight figure it out. It's a journey. It's a process. So.
Yeah.
And so to kind of close out, broad question, semi-related, but we've kind of talked about, you know, a little bit of like understanding our worth and finding our worth is knowing a little bit more about God, you know, learning a little bit more about God. And so what's like something that you feel what's something like very profound about God that you feel like you've learned through your Wesley experience thus far?
Ooh.
And maybe that's like an experience, maybe that's an event, maybe that's like a sermon series we did, but like...
There was this like solid 2-3 month time period where every single time we would like worship and we would like join hands or wrap our arms around each other, I would just cry. Like point blank sob. And it's just, I could like feel like the unconditional love that everyone talks about Christ giving and having. It's like you could just like physically feel it and it would just move me to tears like every time.
Yeah.
I think for me, like when I came to Wesley, what I always had said as like, oh, the story of the Bible is how we got Jesus, you know, which is great, and that is a big part of the Bible. But like Jesus is a great, but like a very hard standard to live up to, you know, sometimes. And so like through Wesley, I learned, no, that is a big part of the story, but a huge theme of the Bible is actually like God's people just failing over and over again, and God still choosing to like love them and give them like grace anyway. And so I think like in that sense, it made the Bible more rounded out to me, because like it wasn't like just about like how like perfect we should try to be, but also that like even when we're not perfect, we're still loved or still given second chances and stuff like that. So yeah,
I like that.
I having kind of worked with Wesley, I've realized I've just learned a lot about God's grace, of just like to myself and to others. And you know, we all have stories, we all have backgrounds, we all have different situations that are going on. It's, you know, I think we're very quick to judge and quick to just assume the worst in people, and I've just learned that things are just so much more nuanced than they appear. And I've definitely learned that kind of working with students from different campuses. And you know, a student could like be gone for 3 weeks and they show back up, and I think when I was like greener in my ministry, I would have been like, dude, where have you been? But now I'm like, I'm so glad you're here, right? Because that's the truth. Like, I'm glad you're here. And then, you know, maybe later I'll be like, hey, so like, is everything good? Because, you know, we didn't see you for a while, and you know, I didn't want to pressure you, but at the same time I wanted to make sure that you're okay.
Like a checkup instead of like a scolding. Yeah,
just in like kind of like giving the benefit of the doubt always, and like trying to assume the best, and that's been very helpful, because I think that like God is very intentional about all that stuff too, and that like, you know, I don't think God is gonna scold me if I haven't prayed for 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that he's gonna like open up the heavens and be like, dude, you dropped the ball. He's gonna be just thrilled that I'm talking to him again, you know? Just like he's thrilled if I talk to him every day. Like, yeah. So God's pretty cool. Big fan of God.
Well, guys, do we have anything else for this episode?
Midterms suck. That's just
best of luck, guys.
Best of luck. Also, it's going to be okay.
All right. Well, with that, we know what's up with Where We Find Our Worth. If you guys have any questions, you can reach us at wuw@wesleychs.org. And also, don't forget to like or follow on whatever platform you're listening to.
And you can check out the website if you want to learn more about us, or if you want to get in contact with us, or any of that good stuff, at wesleychs.org. I also strongly encourage you to find us on Instagram at Charleston Wesley, or you can just look us up on Facebook at Charleston Wesley Foundation. And that'll keep you in the loop on just like fun events, and also you can kind of see what we're about and what we've been up to. So with that, let's pray. God, we thank you for this time together. We thank you for how you see us, not as we see us, but how you see us. You see us as fearfully and wonderfully made. You see us as worthy. You see us as enough. And we should look to you and realize that you are enough in this world. That being in relationship with you and spending our time with you is more important than everything else. And making your will be done is more important than everything else. Help us to find the ways to overlap your will with what we are passionate about, what we enjoy, what we're doing currently. And God, just convict us in the areas that we need to be convicted. Be with us all as we navigate this season. Give us all peace of mind. And God, just help us to continue to grow together, learn together, and be in ministry together. It's in your name that we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Catch you next week.